Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I thought I'd share a few things that I've been doing this week. It has been a bit of a jam-packed week with some DIYs, which I'll be sharing soon in videos. I also put up our Halloween decorations to make the most out of spooky season. I cleared the other guest room, ready for us to get started with that project, and I started packing for a trip that's just under 4 months away. Because I like to be prepared. We have also partnered up with HelloFresh, which I must admit was very handy this week as we didn't have much in the cupboards and had no time to go shopping. So we'll be sharing those meals later on in the video along with a very nice discount code. So we start every day the same way, taking the dogs out for a nice countryside walk. It's actually one of the main reasons that we moved to the countryside. It's a really lovely walk, especially at this time of year. All the trees are starting to change into their autumn colours, and first thing in the morning the air is a little bit crisp, so it really feels like autumn. We always head out as early as possible when it's light so that we can crack on with our work day when we get back. Now, I have had lots of requests for an autumn silent vlog, like the one that I did last winter season, which I will link down below in the description box for anyone who didn't catch it. We do have an autumn one planned, so stay tuned for that at some point over the next couple of months. And in that video, you'll definitely see more of our daily walks with the bees. So we do between 2 and 3 miles on a walk, depending on if we encounter another dog walker. For the sake of Bo and Boris, who do not get on with other dogs, we'll take a different route or maybe even turn back. But either way, they always have a good walk. Once we were home, my first proper task of the week was to clear our second guest room. I'd been dreading this task. We had just withdrawn our next year's budget, so we spent some time planning out and budgeting for our next few projects. One of which is going to be this second guest bedroom, which had pretty much been used as a dumping ground, a linen cupboard, and a bit of an odds and sods room. Our other guest room, which we did back in January, wasn't looking too great either. And this is the aftermath of when I did my wardrobe switchover, which you may have seen in last Sunday's video. That guest room was then essentially full of all of the piles of clothes that I decided to clear out. So my plan for this day was to also sort through these piles of clothes and start taking pictures of things so that I can list them for sale on Vinted and Vestiaire. I pretty much moved everything out of the other guest room onto the landing so that I could figure out where it was going to go from there. There were some things that we needed to take to the charity shop, some other bits which friends had asked for, and then the rest just needed organising and a home finding for it. We have no lack of storage space in this house. Hidden cupboards are absolutely everywhere, so it was pretty easy to find homes for everything. I use vacuum bags for all of the spare cushions and pillows we have because it's probably going to be a few weeks before we get to do any of the room dressing and finishing touches in that guest room. Clearing that guest room, putting things away and starting to organise all of my clear out items took me a good 6 hours. So I had a couple of hours left of good natural light to start taking pictures of the items that I'll be selling. I used the room that we used to have as an office as my photo location. I use my wooden clothing rail and hang items up one by one and take pictures. Ideally, I think taking photos of items being worn, for example, like in a mirror selfie, can actually be the best way to show an item in terms of fit, but unfortunately, that process takes so much longer because you constantly have to keep getting changed. So I just opt for the easier route of taking hanger shots. I try and photograph as many items as possible so that I have a decent amount to list, but it is time consuming and I did just have a pretty big clear out, so this is probably going to take me a few weeks to fully get through everything. For those of you who may be interested in checking out what's going to be for sale, it's best to keep an eye on my Instagram stories where I will let you know a date and time and possibly even a category of what will be up for sale. So for example, knitwear, dresses, or coats, because I know a lot of you have got your eyes on my coats. Once I've got a good few items photographed, I can then list those when I'm just chilling out, sat on the sofa watching TV. I don't need natural light to create listings on Vinted, so I do prioritise those daylight hours for taking the photographs. You can save listings on Vinted, so I usually get them all saved and then publish them by category when I've shared the date and time on my stories. Right, as I mentioned at the start of the video, we have partnered up with HelloFresh this week, and we received our box on Monday morning, which was perfect timing as we hadn't actually gone shopping and the cupboards were a little bit on the bare side. Now, if you're not familiar with HelloFresh, you receive a box filled with all of the fresh produce and various ingredients that you need to make the meals that you would have selected earlier on. So it saves having to go shopping because it's all in the box. The ingredients for each meal are very conveniently in separate paper bags, which are then labelled with the meal number, which coincides with the recipe card for that meal. And that's what you'll use to cook your meal. So we'd put away all of our meal bags in the cupboard earlier on, and then we used the recipe cards to decide which meal we sort of fancied having that evening. Once we decided, I then grabbed that bag for that meal out of the cupboard. I, as you may tell, am very excited by this because I am not very good in the kitchen at all. So having everything in one place, aside from of course the chilled items which were in the fridge, I just found incredibly useful. Okay, so I took the reins for this first meal because as a terrible cook, I wanted to put HelloFresh to the test and see how easy it really was. Our first meal was refried bean and halloumi tacos, which is one of the many quick meal options. Each step is very clearly laid out and worded on the recipe card, and each item, whether it be fresh produce or a condiment or a seasoning, any item that's going to be used within that meal is written in bold. Now, again, for me, this was great because I find cookbooks so confusing and I lose patience with reading things over and over, but this was super clear and very easy to understand, even for me. This meal took 20 minutes and made 3 full tacos for each of us, which were, can I just say, very, very filling. And I don't think that I can necessarily take credit for it, but they were absolutely delicious. Right, so we do have a discount code, Emma Hill in all caps, and this will get you, wait for it, 60% off your first box and then 25% off your next 2 months, that's 2 months worth of boxes. There is a link down below in the description box where you can get started, or for ease, we do have this nifty QR code which you can scan on screen and that will take you directly to the site. Now you'll see our other 2 meals coming up in this video, but after cooking this first one, I would highly recommend just trying it, especially at 60% off your first box. You can't really go wrong, so just give it a go and see what you think. I spent Tuesday working on a DIY project, which I'll be sharing with you soon, but on Wednesday I wanted to get cracking with putting up our Halloween decorations, and to do that, I needed to get festive. I bought this cute Hocus Pocus inspired sweatshirt off Vinted at the start of the month, and it was definitely what I wanted to wear for doing our Halloween decks. So our entrance looked like this in its autumn mode, and I showed all of the details of this in a video a couple of weeks ago. But October is spooky season and I love it. So much like Christmas, Halloween is of course just for one day, or rather one night. So I like to enjoy the build up and have our decorations up for at least a couple of weeks. I got out our Halloween tub and set to work spookying up our entrance area first. Now of course, it's not Halloween without cobwebs, and this stuff is really affordable for one, and it also gives instant Halloween vibes. So I added some of these cobwebs to our autumn wreath so that I didn't have to remove that, and again we can just keep it in place, and then added a few of the little spiders that usually come with this cobweb stuff. I then added some to the box trees that we have either side of our front door. The good thing about this stuff is that you don't have to be neat with it, you literally just pull it apart and loop it around branches or anything that's sticking out. I had these cute little crow decorations, which are really cool, and I added one to the top of this box tree. He comes with wings which you can stick into his body, which is polystyrene. It sounds a bit brutal, but you can stick those into his body at whatever position that you like. These little guys are reusable, so they can be whipped out year after year. Once the other box tree was webbed up, I then used the remaining crows, I had 4 in total, on the tops of the wicker style pumpkins that we already had as part of our autumn door decor. We have a big-ish olive tree in a pot which is on our driveway and just a little bit up from our entrance, and this is the location for Derek. Now, Derek only has a head and 2 arms, but he always has a great time regardless. We have a Halloween mat which I just lay over the top of our Koya welcome mat, and that injects some of that much needed Halloween orange to the mix until I get around to adding some pumpkins, which will be a couple of days before Halloween itself. I added some 3D bats at the start of the walkway to our front door, and I'll be using the rest of these inside. And now for my favourite part, the giant spiders. I'd seen these in the States on our various travels throughout autumn, and I always thought that they looked pretty fun for Halloween, and they can be reused year after year. We've got 6 in total, and they're very lightweight, so even if they get wet, they'll still stay in place. And when there's a bit of wind, they jiggle, which makes them look even more realistic. I added some cobwebs to the olive tree and the bush under the little window because if there were spiders living on the house, they would indeed have webs. Now, I think Halloween is great fun, and I'm really glad that Halloween fever is spreading more and more over here with every year, of course, with great influence from the celebrations in the US. I filled the second half of my day finishing off some little bits on that DIY project I started on Tuesday, and then it was time to cook another HelloFresh dinner. We had 2 left to choose from, and we opted for the sweet potato, ginger and garlic chicken stew. This one was a joint effort, but again, really easy to make with clear instructions, and it had a bit of a kick to it with the ginger and the chilli. Now, I hadn't realised this when picking the meals the previous week because I just got distracted by the delicious sounding titles, but this was actually one of the calorie smart meal options, so there are lower calorie options if that's something that you're looking for. Again, that discount code for HelloFresh can be found below in the description box. Thursday was spent starting another DIY project, which again I'll be sharing soon, but on Friday after our usual morning dog walk, I spent a few hours getting through some more of those photos for Vinted. I got another few piles done and also did some footwear and accessories, so it was a pretty productive morning, and then I could use all those photos to create the listing drafts over the coming weekend to hopefully get them up for sale next week. So keep an eye on my Instagram stories for that date and time. As I mentioned in last week's wardrobe changeover video, I have a trip booked, now set very much in stone for the end of January going into February. I didn't say where it was, but I'm sure those of you long-time viewers will have figured it out. Yes, I am off to Disney World in Florida again. And I've been collecting some new bits to take on that trip as it is now less than 4 months away. 104 days as of today, to be precise. Now, I've been really excited. In fact, I can't tell you how excited about this trip because whilst I have been to Disneyland Paris this year, I haven't been to Disney World, aka home, since 2019, and I just love it there. As a very avid Disney fan and a Disney adult who often gets slated, there's nowhere that you feel more accepted and amongst your people, perhaps other than the OG Disneyland. So I've been using Vinted a lot because it is full of bargains. However, I must admit that I have become slightly obsessed and will check my save searches pretty much every hour. But that has enabled me to get some really cool bits for my trip without spending an absolute fortune. And because of general excitement and my sheer need to be prepared so far in advance, I have been planning some of my outfits just by way of trying things on and then taking a flat lay photo so that I know how many options I have and what else I'd like to add. I've been at this time of year 3 times previously, so I kind of know what to expect with the weather, but of course weather can be unpredictable, so may need to tweak the packing when we get closer, when we can actually see the weather report. I usually pack for all eventualities anyway, so I'm pretty confident that I'll be covered. I'm keeping the bits that I've bought and the shorts and the jeans that I kept out from my wardrobe switchover in my suitcase so that it's all in one place ready for me to pack properly closer to the time. Right, Friday is a pub day, or rather a pub evening, so we often eat dinner a little earlier than usual, and we had one HelloFresh meal left from our box, which was the loaded honey peri-peri smashed potatoes. I had to say that without dribbling down myself because I know how good it tasted when we made it. This was my favourite meal out of the three, and it was a really good portion size. Now, I mentioned this earlier in the video, but I would highly recommend just trying a box, especially with our 60% off code. That makes it less than buying the items in a supermarket. And for us, it was about getting me in the kitchen a bit more so that I feel more confident to cook a meal, because it's usually Simon that does literally all of the cooking. But also just so that we could try some different meals and get out of that routine of just cycling through the same meals, because it's what we know. Okay, well that's it from me this week. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time.